Shape keys are a great tool that should be a part of every Blender animator's toolkit. In this video, we'll be going through the basics of how to use shape key. We'll go over how to create a shape key, how to rig a shape key, and how to use shape keys to correct deformation in your rigs. So let's look at some quick examples of how I use shape keys in my animations. One great example is this bird. For this bird, I actually just use a shape key for the squawk animation. So what I did is I actually hid a model of the bird inside of the bird where I just modeled two models and joined them together, and then just animated the shape key on a hold frame so that it snapped from one to the other. Now, this I do not recommend for long animations because it could become very, very cumbersome and bloat your geometry, and it's not the most efficient way to do it, but for quick little loops like this, it's great. Another place I actually used it is here on my little goober character, is that as you move the foot back and forth, it's actually activating shape keys to prevent his body from deforming too much. Another extreme example where I use a shape key is on my Halloween cat animation. That whole mouth opening is actually just a quick shape key, which you can see here that I just snap open. So let's get started. Here's how you create a shape key. So here we have my little goober character, and we're going to be creating a sad or scared mouth for him to go with this happy mouth. So right now, this is what we have called the base mesh. So if we come over here and you click this little tab right here, we can create a new shape key under this twirl down here, and it's going to give us something called basis. So this is our base mesh, and all other shape keys we use will interact with that base mesh. So now we're going to create another shape key, and we're going to call this one sad. When we have this shape key selected and we tab into edit mode, we can then begin to edit, and all these edits will be saved into our shape key. Now it's important that you only use the same vertices and not try and add new vertices, because what it's going to do is measure from point A to B of each vertice and animate from that when you use the slider. So you can edit your mesh any way that you see fit, but I think the ways that I find easiest are to kind of use the pull down here so that you can grab and animate large chunks, or to switch over into sculpt mode. Now when you're in sculpt mode, you can click around, but you won't see your sculpts until you turn the value all the way up. So just keep that in mind. For this example, I just need to use the edit mode. I'm just gonna go back to edit mode and get started. Now I'm gonna speed through this process so that you can watch me create the sad mouth for a shape key. Okay, so here we have what looks like a sad mouth. Now this is very rough. Of course, we'd want to change his eyes and things like that, but for the sake of speed, we're just going to stick with this for now. So how do we animate it? Well, over here, we have this little slider right here. And this allows us to shift from the base mesh, and if we slide it up to a value of 1, that shape key now takes over. So now he looks sad. So you can see that if we go from there to there, we can animate it. Now we could make this animation a bit better if we just put the mouth in a more similar position. So I could go in here, and the mouth is kind of already off kilter, so we could straighten that mouth up and the animation would look a little more solid. But for the sake of demonstration purposes, we're gonna move forward with this. So that's the basics of creating a shape key and how you can use a shape key. Now to animate a shape key, you can actually just put a keyframe on here by pressing I or clicking this little button here and moving forward. Let's turn that up, insert another keyframe, and then it'll animate from point A to B. That's a pretty ugly animation, I know, but it gets the point across about how to use the tool. So let's go ahead and let's delete these keyframes, and let's talk about how we can rig this shape key for easier animation. So let's come over here and let's create a plane and rotate that 90 degrees on the x-axis. I'm going to press N to bring up my proportions up here, and let's see. Let's make this tab in the edit mode, and scale that down. There we go. We'll come over here in the object mode. Now we're going to click this right here. We're going to display this as bounds, and then we're going to go into visibility and turn off show in renders. That way it won't show up in our renders. Now let's duplicate this, and let's make this 0.25 tall. Okay, let's bring that down to the bottom here. We're going to parent this square to this rectangle, transform, parent this rectangle to this goober, and then let's create a text, rotate that by 90 degrees. Have an edit mode here, and call this happy sad. Now, I'm only going to show you how to make this one little mouth animation, but this gives you an idea of how you could do a face rig. In future videos, we'll do a more complicated face rig that's more animator friendly and set up for good animation. This is more just showing you the basics of using the shape. Let's come over here and we'll uncheck show and render so that doesn't pop up. And then we'll parent this text to this rectangle here with keep transform. So now we have this control that moves all our other controls, and we have this that moves all our controls. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this rectangle that as we go up and down, it's going to transition from a happy to sad face. So here at the bottom, we'll just say that it's happy, and then as we move up, it'll get sad. So what we'll do is we don't want to be able to move this all around. So we're going to come over here, we're going to select our object, this object pane, and then up here you have the transforms. We're going to lock everything but the Z axis. And now we can't move it anywhere but up and down. Now we don't want to be able to move it way out of the bounds. So what we'll do is we'll come over here to the Objects Constraint tab, which is this little tube looking icon, and we'll come here and we'll click Limit Location. We're going to do minimum Z, maximum Z. We're going to change this to local space. And what we're going to do is we're going to first uncheck this so we can move things around. And here is where we want our minimum Z to be. So we will hold Control C over that, copy that into minimum. And let's say we don't want it to go any further than here. So we will take that and we will copy there. So now we see that across here it's traveling. And then we'll turn our icon back on. And then now we can see that it doesn't go past that range. And just to make this simpler, let's do 0.5 to 1.5. We'll take this. Make that a bit smaller. Make that in closer. And there we go. Now we have a little working control. So now we need to attach the shape key to the range of the square. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this tab with our shape keys. We're going to click here on our goober. We're going to right click our sad shape key. We're going to right click the value of our sad shape key, and we're going to hit add driver. We're just going to leave this at default for now, because I'm going to show you how to use the driver menu. So we're going to come over here. We're going to click down here and change this to drivers. We will click our goober, and we can see that we have our keys up here. We will click it there, press N to bring out this view here. I'm just going to scrunch this over a bit, close that. And now we can adjust the range of our driver and all the settings. So we'll go up here, click the drivers tab. So now that we have that, let's choose the object that we will be following. So we're going to be following our little square right here. We're going to do Z location as the type because we're moving up and down in Z space, and we're going to do local space. So you can see that up here, he is fully sad, and then, or as we come down here, he's happy. But he's not all the. So we can see here that it's defaulted to sad because our value of our square right now is 1.5, and this is the value it's measuring since we told it Z location. So if we come down, grab this and drag it all the way down, you see that it doesn't get all the way happy. And that's because if we go over here, we see that it's only at 527. If we click here, we says that he's at 527. So what we need to do is change the range of our driver. So we're going to click the goober, we're going to come back to our driver over here. We're going to change this value. So we can change that value by grabbing these handles, going up to the F curve, and then we can change the key value. So let's see. Right now, this line represents what the value is at. So we'll take this key, we'll just click left a couple times, and as you can see over here until it intersects with there. Now he's happy. So now when we drag here, it goes sad to happy. And that's the basics of rigging a shape key with a little control like this. Now in future videos, we'll get into full facial rigs, and you can have upper corner mouse, you can have eye blinks, and you can have how much teeth you show, and a lot of complicated things like that. But this is just a basic overview. So next, let's get into the corrective deformation. So let's look at this arm here. So here we have an arm, and I've already kind of done a rough rig on it, but let's look at a common issue that occurs with arms. So you rig your arm, and then you rotate this key, and you see here that we lose all of our shape there. And as we know, our arms do not collapse into themselves like that. So we'll pull it out here so you can see it a little bit easier. So this is how you do a corrective shape key. So we're going to take this, we're going to create our base shape key, and we're going to create another shape key. We will call this bicep fix, and we're going to use sculpt mode for this. So we will turn the value up, and then we will come over here to our armature. We're going to click this so that you see it in edit mode when we're working on it. That way the armature kind of stays there. Then we will switch over to sculpt mode. I'm just going to grab the inflate here. And the problem is that it's deflating in here. So let's just kind of reach in there, turn that strength up. Make sure that we have our value up here. And there we go. So you can kind of fix that. We also know that a bicep will kind of flex as you move your arm that way, so we can work to move that out a little bit. Now this is really low geometry. I'm just using it as an example so that it renders fast for us. Now, that's not a perfect fix, but you could spend time finessing the geometry. So let's look at how we would use a bone to drive this shape key. Now you can use these kind of shape keys all over your rig, so you can use it to fix all various portions that are kind of deforming. Usually you're going to use it a lot in the arms, maybe like when you're doing extreme bends with the body, or a lot of times when the leg bends backwards, it kind of collapses around the knee. So this is useful for all those situations. So this is very similar to what we did before. We're going to start by right-clicking here and adding a driver. Again, we will leave this blank. We will drag this menu out so that we can go to the driver menu. We'll have this shape key selected. Just for peace of mind, I'm going to switch back to object mode here. And just like before, we're going to select that key, go to driver. But this time for the object, we're going to choose the armature, and then we need to choose that bone that we want to drive it. So we want it to be this bone right here, which is labeled bone.001. We will choose bone.001. And we need to figure out what axis we're rotating on. So we can see here that we're rotating on the Z axis if you look up here when we move it around. So we will click here and we will tell it that we want to use Z rotation. And you can see that something's happened here. Now let's go to local space, and we can see that we have a value of -21. So we're going to want this to kind of be the inverse of what it's doing. So once it gets here, we kind of want our shape key to be fully intact. So what we need to do now is we need to use an expression up here, which is like kind of like a code. We're just going to do some simple math here so that we can invert the number up here, so that as we rotate in, this will go up. So if this is -1, we want it to be +1. So that's simple enough math. We'll use an asterisk for times, and then we'll do a parentheses, -1, and close that parentheses. And you'll see here, as soon as I click, there we go. Now it fills up because the value is now up here. You can see it is now, instead of -1.2, it is now +1.2, because it is taking the variable, which is taking all that information here in this value, and it's timesing it by -1 to get this value, and this value is what drives this value over here. So here we go. You can see that as we go back out, it returns to normal, and that's important because if our shape key was active out here, this would all look distorted. Now to go on and do this with the rest of a rig, you would just change these variables. So let's say this was arm L. You would just change this to arm L, and then you could do that so on for arm R and leg and body and whatever other bones you were trying to do. So that's just a basic overview of shape keys. In future videos, we're going to get into more advanced rigs, but it's important that you understand these basics before jumping into more complicated rigs. Thanks for watching this video. Like and comment and subscribe and hit that bell notification if you want to see more or if you want to help me out. I've picked somebody from the community and their artwork to highlight in the background here in the video. I'm going to start doing that at the end of my videos. If you want your artwork to be considered to be tagged here at the end of the videos, then please tag me in your artwork on Instagram. There's a link to my Instagram in the description below. It's Southern Shoddy. Again, thank you for watching, and let me know what future tutorials you want to see and what kind of content you want from this channel.